The tunnel was supposed to be abandoned, sealed decades ago. But Ibrahim Traoré heard the sounds coming from below, children's voices, and when he broke through the false wall, what he saw made him realize this wasn't just a mine. It was a prison. June 3, 2025. 2:47 a.m. A convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled through the darkness toward the Kourouma Gold Mine, located 200 kilometers northeast of Ouagadougou. There were no sirens, no advanced security teams, no media notifications. Just Ibrahim Traoré, 4 trusted soldiers, and an engineer named Fatima Kone, who had worked in mines her entire life. They were responding to a message that had arrived 18 hours earlier, a message that would expose one of the darkest secrets in African mining history. The message came through an encrypted channel used only by Traoré's most sensitive intelligence sources. It contained no name, no identifying information, just coordinates, a timestamp, and 5 words. Level 9. They're still down there. Attached was a grainy video, filmed on what appeared to be a phone hidden in clothing. The footage showed a narrow tunnel, dimly lit by flickering bulbs, and in the shadows, barely visible, were small figures, children, moving rocks, loading carts, working. Traoré had watched that video 12 times. Each time, his jaw tightened. Child labor in illegal mines wasn't new in West Africa. Criminal operations existed, and his government had been cracking down on them aggressively. But the Kourouma mine was different. It was legal, licensed. Operated by a multinational corporation called Aureus Mining International, based in Switzerland, with major shareholders in London and Paris. The mine had passed government inspections. It employed over 2,000 workers. It paid taxes. It was, on paper, a model operation. But if the video was real, then everything was a lie. Traoré didn't notify the mining company. He didn't alert local authorities. He knew that if there was truth to the accusation, warning anyone would give them time to hide the evidence. So he assembled his team in secret, and they drove through the night. They arrived at the mine entrance at 3:15 a.m. The night shift was underway. Security guards at the gate recognized the presidential convoy immediately and scrambled to attention. Traoré stepped out, his face unreadable. "I'm here for an inspection," he said simply. The head of security stammered, "Sir, we weren't informed. The mine director isn't here. We need to contact—" Traoré cut him off. "You don't need to contact anyone. Open the gate." The mine director, a French expatriate named Philippe Rousseau, was called from his home and arrived 20 minutes later, visibly nervous. He greeted Traoré with forced professionalism. "Mr. President, this is highly irregular. If you had scheduled a visit, we would have prepared proper safety protocols, arranged a tour." Again, Traoré interrupted. "I don't need a tour. I need access to Level 9. Rousseau's face went pale. "Level 9? Sir, that section has been closed for years. It's structurally unsafe. We sealed it after a collapse in, I believe it was 2018. There's nothing down there." Traoré held up his phone, showing the video. "Then explain this." Rousseau stared at the screen. For a moment, his mouth opened but no words came out. Then he recovered. I don't know what that is. It could be from anywhere. It's certainly not from this mine." Traoré pocketed the phone. "Then you won't mind if we go down and confirm that?" Rousseau hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, but I must insist that our safety team accompanies you. Level 9 is genuinely dangerous." Traoré agreed, but he made sure Fatima Kone stayed close. If there were structural lies being told, she would spot them. They descended in the industrial elevator, a massive steel cage that rattled and groaned as it dropped into the earth. Levels 1 through 5 were active mining zones, brightly lit, filled with workers and machinery. Levels 6 and 7 were storage and equipment maintenance. Level 8 was darker, mostly empty, with only a skeleton crew managing ventilation systems. And then they reached Level 9. The elevator doors opened to darkness. Rousseau shone a flashlight into the void. As you can see, Mr. President, this level is completely inactive. The tunnels beyond this point were sealed after the collapse. He gestured to a concrete wall about 30 meters ahead, blocking the main tunnel. It looked official, professional, stamped with safety warnings and a date. Condemned, October 2018. But Fatima Kone was already walking toward the wall, examining it closely. She knocked on the concrete, listened, knocked again. Then she turned to Traoré. "Sir, this wall is recent, no more than a few months old. The concrete hasn't fully cured. And look." She pointed to the edges where the wall met the tunnel rock. "These are expansion joints. You don't put expansion joints in a permanent seal. You put them in removable barriers." Rousseau's expression shifted from nervous to panicked. That's absurd. Our records clearly state—" Traoré raised a hand, silencing him. "Break it down." One of the soldiers stepped forward with a sledgehammer. The first strike cracked the concrete. The second blow punched through, and as the barrier crumbled, a sound emerged from the darkness beyond. A faint, rhythmic clanging. Metal on stone. And something else. Voices. Small, tired voices. They pushed through the broken wall and entered the tunnel beyond. The air changed immediately. It was hotter, more humid, thick with dust. The tunnel stretched ahead, lit by a string of weak, bare bulbs hanging from frayed wires. And then they saw them. Children. Dozens of children. Ranging in age from perhaps 8 years old to early teens, dressed in ragged clothes, their faces covered in dust and grime. They were pushing carts loaded with rocks, chipping at tunnel walls with hand tools, hauling buckets of stone up makeshift ramps. The children froze when they saw the group of adults approaching. Fear filled their eyes. One boy dropped his tool and ran deeper into the tunnel. Others simply stood, trembling. Traoré felt a wave of rage so intense he had to steady himself against the tunnel wall. He turned to Rousseau. "You're telling me this section was sealed in 2018? Rousseau said nothing. He was staring at the children as if seeing ghosts. Traoré walked forward slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. He approached a girl who looked about 10 years old. Her hands blistered and bleeding from holding a pick. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl didn't answer. She just stared. Fatima Kone knelt beside her. "It's okay. We're not here to hurt you." "What's your name?" the girl whispered. "Amina." "Amina, how long have you been here?" The girl looked confused. I don't know. A long time." "Where are your parents?" "I don't know." Another child, a boy slightly older, stepped forward. His voice was stronger. "They took us from our villages. They said our families sold us to pay debts. They said we have to work until the debt is paid. But the debt never gets smaller, only bigger." Traoré's hands clenched into fists. "How many of you are down here?" The boy looked around. "In this tunnel, maybe 50. But there are other tunnels. I've heard there are hundreds." "Hundreds." Traoré turned to his soldiers. "Secure this area. No one leaves. No one communicates with the surface until I give the order." Then he turned to Rousseau. "You're under arrest. Fatima, I need you to map every tunnel on this level. Find them all." Over the next 6 hours, as dawn broke above ground, the full horror of Level 9 was uncovered. There were 7 separate tunnel networks, all hidden behind false walls or concealed access points. In total, they found 237 children. The youngest was 6 years old. They had been trafficked from villages across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Some had been there for years. They worked 12-hour shifts in brutal conditions, mining a specific type of ore, coltan, a mineral used in smartphones and electronics, far more valuable than gold. The operation was sophisticated. The children were kept in underground barracks, fed minimal rations, given no medical care. Injuries were common. Several children had lost fingers in accidents. Others showed signs of chronic respiratory disease from dust inhalation, and the system was designed to be invisible. Official mine production reports showed only gold extraction. The coltan was smuggled out separately, sold to middlemen who supplied tech manufacturers in Asia and Europe. But the most damning discovery came when Fatima's team found a hidden office deep in the Level 9 complex. Inside were computers, file cabinets, and financial records. The operation wasn't rogue. It was systematic, coordinated, and highly profitable. The records showed payments to local officials who turned a blind eye, contracts with trafficking networks that supplied children, and wire transfers to offshore accounts held by executives at Aureus Mining International. One document, marked Confidential Executive Summary, laid it all out. Level 9 Shadow Operations. Annual revenue, $47 million USD. Labor cost, near zero. Operational risk, minimal with proper containment protocols. The document was signed by 3 people: Philippe Rousseau, the CFO of Aureus Mining, and a government minister in Burkina Faso's own Ministry of Mines. Traore read that document sitting in the underground office, his face illuminated by the glow of a laptop screen. When he finished, he closed the computer slowly. Then he stood, walked out into the tunnel, and looked at the children who were now being wrapped in blankets and given water by his soldiers. Some were crying. Some were silent, in shock. One little girl hugged a soldier's leg and wouldn't let go. Traore made a call on his satellite phone. "I need medical teams, child psychologists, and social workers, and I need media, international media. Get crews from Al Jazeera, BBC, and African networks. They need to see this." By noon, the story broke globally. Footage of the children being brought out of the mine, blinking in the sunlight for the first time in months or years, dominated every news channel. Traore gave a press conference from the mine entrance. He didn't mince words. "What you are seeing is modern slavery. 237 children, stolen from their families, forced to work in conditions that would be illegal in any civilized nation, to produce materials that end up in the phones and computers used by people all over the world. This wasn't a rogue operation. This was corporate policy, enabled by corruption, protected by silence, and profited from by some of the wealthiest companies on Earth." He held up a piece of coltan ore. "This mineral is in your devices. The children who mined it were 6, 7, 8 years old, and the companies that benefited from their suffering will be held accountable. I don't care how powerful they are. I don't care where they're based. Justice will reach them." The international response was chaotic. Human rights organizations demanded investigations. Tech companies scrambled to audit their supply chains. Switzerland launched a criminal probe into Aureus Mining International. And within Burkina Faso, protests erupted, demanding the arrest of every official involved. The government minister named in the documents tried to flee the country, but was arrested at the airport. Rousseau and his management team were charged with human trafficking, child exploitation, and conspiracy. Aureus Mining's assets in Burkina Faso were seized, and the company's stock price collapsed as investors fled. But Traore's focus wasn't on punishment. It was on the children. Each one was given medical care, psychological support, and a safe place to stay. Social workers began the painstaking process of locating their families. Some reunions were joyful, others were heartbreaking. Parents who had believed their children were working legally in the city, sending money home, only to discover they had been enslaved underground. One boy, the same one who had spoken up in the tunnel, was named Sekou. He was 14. He had been in level 9 for 3 years. When he was finally reunited with his mother, she collapsed in tears, clinging to him. Traore attended the reunion. Sekou's mother looked up at him, her face wet with tears, and said, "You brought my son back. You brought him back from the dead." Traore knelt beside her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry we didn't find him sooner." She shook her head. "You found him. That's what matters." In the weeks that followed, Traore pushed for continental action. He called for an African Union task force on child trafficking and mining exploitation. He proposed a certification system for minerals, ensuring they were extracted ethically. And he challenged Western consumers. You cannot enjoy your technology while ignoring where it comes from. Demand transparency. Demand accountability. Or you are complicit. The Kourouma mine was shut down permanently. The site was transformed into a memorial and educational center, documenting what had happened and ensuring it would never be forgotten. And the 237 children became symbols, not of victimhood, but of survival and the urgent need for change. Sekou, the boy who had spoken up, eventually gave a speech at the memorial opening. He stood in front of cameras, no longer afraid, and said, "They tried to bury us in the dark. They thought no one would come, but someone did. And now the world knows. We are not invisible. We matter. And no child should ever be taken into the earth like that again." Ibrahim Traoré stood in the back of the crowd, listening. And for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel something other than anger. He felt hope. Because the tunnel had been opened, the truth had been brought into the light, and 237 lives had been saved. But he also knew this was just one mine, one operation, and across Africa, across the world, there were more. More tunnels, more children, more darkness. The fight was far from over, but it had begun, and it would not stop.